Now, when you hear the word French, the things that you think about immediately are flair and style. Things like food, art, clothes, everything. Which brings us to this, the new Peugeot 5008 SUV. Let's start first with the obvious, and that's the way it looks. From the outside, you can already tell that the Peugeot 5008 SUV is very imposing. Imposing in a good way. It looks very, very stylish, very, very modern, and most importantly, very, very different from what the others have to offer. One of the most imposing features about the exterior of the 5008 SUV is the frameless radiator grille, which are flanked by the full LED headlights and what Peugeot calls the illuminated Fangs designed daytime running lights, which at night are actually very spectacular to look at. And over at the rear, you do get full LED rear taillights that have a 3D claws impression, which again, giving more character something as mundane as taillights, a very French thing to do. And over at the side, it has some chrome accents just to highlight the features and the curves and the lines of the body. While the exterior is obviously very stylish and very imposing, Peugeot didn't forget about the interior, which is undoubtedly my most favorite place to be in this car, because as you can see, it's very, very stylish. Peugeot calls it the iCockpit system, which is very driver-centric. You can see that most of the controls, even the screen, are askew, facing towards me, the driver, which is a good thing. But there are three highlights about this new iCockpit system. First being the compact steering wheel. As you can see, it's very compact, and when I mean compact, it's actually quite small. It actually reminds me of a Formula 1 race car steering wheel, which is cool. Behind that, you get these paddle shifters, but the whole thing doesn't move. There are these nice strips of steel or chrome that once you click, that's how you shift your gear. Cool, right? But in front of me, you get the heads-up instrument cluster, which I found to be very, very good because of its line of sight. While I was driving a while ago, I noticed that I didn't have to move my head up or down or really take my eyes off the road to be able to see all the information displayed right in front of me. It's also customizable. There are different styles and displays for you to play with. Very, very cool. To the right, you see the big infotainment screen, which has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Not to mention, you can configure other settings of the car from here. Below that, you get these nice buttons for the air conditioning, navigation, phone, other apps, and they're like these covered in the same strip over here. It's the same material, make it very premium feel. But below it, you actually get a wireless charging port, which is very, very cool and not very common. But for this price point, I kind of expected there to be one. So good thing they put it. Over here on the side, you actually have different drive modes for snow, mud crawling. And I had to research, is it all-wheel drive? And I found out that it wasn't. So interesting that Peugeot put a different driving modes for a car that's just two-wheel drive. You have the gear shift over here. It's kind of confusing to use at first, but I'll explain that later. And over here, you have the start-stop button. And overall, the interior is actually very, very nice to be in. The seats are very comfortable. And oh, before I forget to mention, there are these accents here, which are something like, feel like my jeans. They're very, it's different. It's a good breakaway from wood and piano black and all that sort. And above me is a very, very big panoramic sunroof. Of course, this being a family car, we can't just purely talk about the nice things in front. We also have to talk about the second row and yes, third row, because this is a 7-seater. Now in front of me, you have two air conditioning vents with a USB port, as well as the controls for the air conditioning fan speed. I also have to point out that the legroom here is pretty good, considering this is my driving position and I'm about 5'9", 5'10". Here in the center, you get the center armrest with two cup holders. Above me, you can better appreciate the big panoramic sunroof that I mentioned earlier. And these seats can actually adjust. They move forward, move back, and they even fold flat. Speaking of fold flat, let's talk about the third row, which I think has its own challenges. Remember when I said that the third row presents its own challenges? Well, rather than me explain it first, I'd like to show you first the challenges. Okay, so let me explain the process to you. The car comes with a tonneau cover, which is good for privacy and keeping your stuff from being seen or stolen. But you have to remove that, then you have to pull over the carpet covers, then pull the seats up just to get the 7-seat configuration. Yeah, it's good that it's 7 seats, but it's quite complicated. And well, the seating arrangement is not bad, but I can already tell that you might have to be quite a small person to fit in the third row. But it's nice to know that it's there, but I hope Peugeot can address this in future models. Powering the Peugeot 5008 SUV is a 1.6-liter twin-scroll turbo high-pressure engine, which is mated to a 6-speed automatic transmission. Power output is 165 PS and 240 Newton meters of torque, which is respectable. Another thing I have to point out though is this isn't a diesel. This is petrol or gasoline powered. But enough talk from me, let's get it out on the road. So now that I'm driving the 5008 SUV, and I'll try to relate to you as much as possible what it feels like to drive. The good things and the bad things. There are really not much bad things, but I'll start with the bad news first. The gear lever is kind of confusing to use in the beginning because you have to press a button to unlock it to be able to shift it into reverse, neutral, or drive from park. I will admit there were a couple of times where I thought I was in reverse or drive, but I was actually in neutral. That is obviously unsafe, but maybe I'm just stupid and not paying attention. But after a while, I got used to it and it became second nature. Another sort of negative is I would say that the ride in the back, I can feel, even though I'm driving, I can kind of feel that it's stiff because going over some humps that I was going through and some of the rougher portions here in Tanay, I noticed that it's a little bouncy and a little rough. Maybe, of course, this being a 7-seater, the more you load it with passengers and cargo, it should get better. But the good things I will say is the engine response is fine. It's actually very quiet also. And there's actually a sport mode here. If you really feel like you want to drive this big SUV in a sporty manner, you can. The paddle shifters, they feel good. The response from the shifting time, not bad as well. So to really sum it up, while the ride is stiff and the gear lever is kind of confusing to use, everything else is fine. I have no complaints. That iCockpit system really works with the head-up instrument panel. I can see everything I need to see, all the information relevant to the car, and all of that. And that's really what matters. It's quiet, decently comfortable, and the response is pretty good. You need not want for anything more. So now it brings us to the most important question, which is how much does this all cost? Well, the loan variant of the 5008 SUV retails for 2,260,000 Philippine pesos. Yes, that's a lot of money, and that puts it right up there with more established competitors. But also, I'm sure a lot of people are going to point out in the comments how Peugeot does have a checkered history in our country and all. But they do have a new distributor, Astara, and they are very, very experienced when it comes to the distribution of certain brands. And they also promise to be more supportive of future Peugeot buyers. Next, I have to point out that while this car is French, it's not actually made in France. This actually is assembled in Malaysia in the Stellantis plant, Peugeot being part of that big group and all. Also, and lastly, this car was tested, they say, to about 300,000 kilometers, so it should be a pretty reliable car. But should you buy one? That's entirely up to you. If you like this video, please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel below, and please don't forget to follow us also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. This has been Pablo Salapantan of YugaAuto.com. Thank you for watching.